Welcome, my friends. Welcome to my world. I'm your host, Kevin Rutherford. It is Monday, December 5th. We are here live. It is a free-for-all. Anything goes. We're going to open the phone lines right now, so start dialing. In fact, you should dial quickly here. I've got just about nothing this morning. So today is all about you and what you want to talk about. 855-950-3835 is the number to join us. Anything goes. If you have a question, a comment, a topic, pick up the phone and jump in. We can talk about trucks, money, fuel mileage, maintenance, tires, taxes, technology, health and fitness on the road, getting started as an owner-operator, finding freight, working with brokers, getting your authority. You name it, we'll talk about it. All you have to do is pick up the phone. So last week, it seems like I just had an overabundance of stuff I wanted to talk about on my commentary or at the show opens. I couldn't even seem to get it all in. This week, I got up this morning fairly early, started reviewing stuff, and there's like nothing in the news today. It's all repeats of last week's stuff. So, you know, there's a lot going on, just not a lot happening with everything that's going on right now. I almost wonder if part of it is because Elon Musk seems to be dominating the news cycle everywhere. The mainstream media just seems to be losing its mind. On last week, Elon Musk released some papers from Twitter and how Twitter was colluding with the government to delete and hide certain posts. You know, I said when Twitter was doing it, or Facebook or YouTube or whoever, they're private companies. And I believe that and I stand by that. They have the right to do that if they want. And then we have the right to not use their services, which is partially what we've been doing. I wasn't on Twitter for a very, very long time, but really ever. In the beginning, it was mostly because I just didn't see the relevance of it. And then by the time it did become very relevant, there was some pretty heavy censorship going on, especially around health. I mean, that was the first area that they really came after before we even heard of cancel culture and all of the other things going on with social media. They had come after health pretty early. Then if you said anything negative about the vaccine, but now that seems to be changing, at least on Twitter, and this will put pressure on the other platforms. Now, it looks like it is true that the government pressured Twitter and other social media platforms to delete or censor or hide. That's a whole different matter. That is a breach of the First Amendment. If a private company does it, that's their choice. I've said that from the beginning. Not that I like it, but it's their choice. That's the way it should be. But when the government pressures those companies, that is a totally different issue. All right, so calls are starting to come in. Like I said, I really didn't have a lot anyway today, so keep the calls coming. We're going to jump into those right now. 855-950-3835 is the number to join us. We're going to get started in Missouri today. Dale, welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. I bought some of that Cardio Miracle that special you had a week or so ago.
Okay.
And I went ahead and I stopped taking my blood pressure medicine. That's lisinopril and hydrochlorothiazide. It's 20 milligrams is what it is. And then also another change I made after talking to you about, I ordered some different adaptogen coffee mushroom products for my wife, who's actually going to call in today on her lunch break, noon local time. I told her to talk to you a little bit, and then you'll probably eventually just put her on hold, and you'll have her schedule a discovery call with her. So I told her to have her planner with her so she can pick a time when they give her one. You know.
Good.
But at any rate, back to this deal. I was telling you about what she did, that she would have 2 mugs of coffee and then take a 20-ounce to-go mug, and he was like, "Oh, wow." like that was a lot of coffee.
It's a lot of caffeine. It is.
Well, at that time, what I was doing is I would drink. I got this big mug. I can get 2 and maybe a half cups out of that 10-cup crap,
Okay.
So I would drink that while I was making my lunch. I would fill up a quart thermos and a 30-ounce to-go cup, and I did that 5 days a week. And on the weekend, I'd probably drink damn near 2 pounds of coffee in the morning.
Holy cow.
So I got thinking, if you was that, well, I was sitting there thinking, if you was like that freaked out by the amount my wife was drinking, I was like, holy man, you'd be telling me like, I don't know what to do with you. But so in a week's time, I cut that down to 1 30-ounce mug of coffee, period, a day.
Good. Okay.
So, and then I was explaining to my wife, because she asked me why I was doing this. I go, it's for blood pressure. And she goes, well, why do you want to cut down coffee? And I go, because it's the caffeine. And she goes, well, it wakes you up. And I go, well, and you might correct me if I'm misspeaking. I told her, I go, well, the reason why I believe caffeine wakes you up, just like all the other shit they told us to eat, like bread and pasta for the last 50 years, they're like, hey, drink coffee. It'll really wake you up. And we was like, wow, it works. I'm going to drink coffee now. But the reason it works is that your body sees the caffeine as a poison, so it speeds up your metabolism really fast to get that shit out of your system as soon as possible, which makes you wake up.
No, not exactly. All the end results are the same. Caffeine itself is a pretty unique molecule, and there are only a few foods on the planet we can get caffeine from. Coffee and tea are the big ones. A lot of people think there's caffeine in chocolate. That's actually not true. There's a compound in chocolate called theobromine, which has a very similar effect on our nervous system that caffeine does. It's just a lot more mild. I mean, if you drink a cup of coffee and you don't ever drink coffee, you feel it. I mean, you can get really jittery, and it is definitely a stimulant. It's along the same lines as cocaine, methamphetamine, Adderall. All of those compounds are stimulants to our nervous system. Now, caffeine is pretty mild comparatively, but even if you look at cocaine, the plant that it comes from, the coca plant, in South America, it's really common to just chew those leaves. Like the way we might chew tobacco. People will actually chew the leaf and hold it in their cheek. They'll get the caffeine from that. Well, I'm sorry, it's not caffeine. We were talking about the cocaine plant. They'll get that stimulant, but it's in a really, really mild form, and it's not much different than the way we use caffeine. Now, it's when you start concentrating those things that they become really dangerous. When we take that coca plant and we process it down and we concentrate it into cocaine, now it becomes pretty dangerous. Caffeine, we can't really do that with, because if you increase the levels of caffeine too much, it does become toxic. It's not... the caffeine molecule can cause all kinds of problems at high doses. Now, what happens is we can become accustomed to it. We can build a tolerance to it. And when you're at 30 plus ounce, even now, your amount, 30 ounces a day, is kind of like my upper limit. I mean, you've brought yours down into, a usable limit, but that's the upper part of the limit. Much more than that. Here's another thing. You probably don't feel the effects of caffeine much anymore. You've become very tolerant to it, but there is clearly an amphetamine-like effect from caffeine. That's what the molecule does. So too much of it just overstimulates all of the chemicals that we don't want too much of in today's world where we're overstressed. Cortisol, ephedrine, things like that just really stimulate our nervous system, and we end up overstimulated. That's really the problem with caffeine. And in today's world, with as stressful as everything is, that can really become a problem.
Okay, so today will be the fifth day that I did not take my blood pressure medicine.
Okay.
And then now that you know that my coffee intake's down to 30 ounces a day, I got my Omron cuff out last night, and the only way I could get my blood pressure down to where I could pass the DOT physical was Wim Hof breathing.
Okay.
But as soon as I quit doing that, went right back to a fail rate.
Yeah, so here's what that tells us.
Because
that actually tells us something. That tells us that you are struggling to stay in the rest and digest mode. That's really what the Wim Hof breathing is kind of almost forcing us into. It's so effective. It gets us into that rest and digest mode. That's the two sides of our nervous system, rest and digest, and fight or flight. And our lifestyle, we're surrounded by all these stressful events, and that keeps us in the fight or flight mode. That's what kind of wears out our nervous system. We, sometimes refer to it as adrenal fatigue. And more caffeine was probably trying to make up for the fact that your adrenals were getting kind of tired and they're not putting out the chemicals you need to keep you awake. And then we start to lean on caffeine for that. So it's going to take some time, but that's actually a good sign that your high blood pressure is being caused by the fact that you're just spending too much time in the fight or flight mode.
So I need to revert back to an acronym I came up with for people like CTFD, for when they're too excited, they need to calm down.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm a huge analogy and acronym guy.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, we just need to step away from all of that kind of stress that we deal with every day. And we have
and I really should be able to do that.
Well, the other thing I have to say, because I've actually found this to be more important, stepping away from it once in a while is important. We need that break. What we really need to do is build our stress resilience back. And that's what the whole stress protocol is about. The Wim Hof breathing, the cold exposure, all of those things actually make our stress muscle stronger so that if we are surrounded by stress, we can actually deal with it better.
Yeah, and I really should be able to do the CTFD, and I do. It's easy for me to do cold exposure right this minute because the climate I live in.
Yeah,
and also exactly. I know you can do it in the shower because I got well water, and if you want to know about cold exposure,
it's cold.
Crack that open from a well
right.
that's 752 feet deep.
Yes, that'll be cold.
Anyhow. Yeah, I got thinking, I worked for, they're no longer a company anymore, CCX. I worked for them. I'm still working for the company after they changed names and got bought out. But when I've been here 28 years, and in the environment of working in the P&D operation on the dock, you got pounds per man hour, stops for an hour. You've done P&D operations. You're wheeling and dealing, and this guy's at lunch. You got to go hit this dock. That guy stops, float out. Come over here. You know how you got, if you drew a spaghetti map of what you did all day, it would look hectic,
Yeah.
But anyways, now I just run a day lane line haul, like 400 miles. It's a meet and turn.
Okay.
The last 2 years I spent building the house, which I had to fire the builder. That was a big stressor.
Yes.
So pretty much right now, I really don't have a lot to stress me out.
Then you've got half of it beat because you're not surrounded by. Now, the other thing we have to do is we have to make sure we don't allow just everyday stuff to stress us out. And a lot of people do. The traffic in the morning, or the drive-through screwed up their coffee order or whatever. And then they get to work and, something happens at work. And it's just all day long if we're not careful. If we don't really pay attention to how things might be stressing us. That's one part. The other one is almost everybody we see today, I would say, is just weak when it comes to stress resilience. We've kind of worn ourselves out, and once you get to that point, it becomes really difficult to turn that around unless you are doing the specific things we need to do. Just resting, I have found you can rest an awful lot, and you'll kind of take yourself out of that stress. You'll recover if you rest long enough. The problem is, as soon as you go back to everyday life, you're stressed again. That's when we figured out you can't just avoid stress. We really have to build our stress resilience.
Well, and I think there's a time for me to take a deeper look at the causes or the effects of stress, because I've always tried to stay pretty in tune with myself. And like when I ran PM line haul, and back before we got this 10 hours off a day, which if I was over the road, I would totally hate this. But for local guys, it's great. We should have totally different rules because we do totally different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Back then, for the over-the-road drivers that don't know why that's that way, I would get off work and you could do no paperwork on DOT-required paperwork, logbook, or inspection forms on company time because that wasn't company required. So you'd get off work, punch off their clock, fill out all that stuff, hand that in, and when we're busy, they would say, be back on your 8. That meant you had 8 hours to now leave, get your pickup, drive home, clean up, try to get sleep as fast as you can, wake back up, pack a lunch, get your coffee, whatever, get back, drive all the way back to work, radio in the truck, logbook inspection form filled out, and punch back in. And if you did not do all that in 8 hours, you were tardy. And if you had 3 tardies in 1 year, you're fired.
Yeah. Yep.
We didn't get shit for sleep.
Yeah, that's the system I grew up with. That's what my father did the whole time I was growing up. Just about. He worked for a union line haul company, and most of the time it was. I was a teenager, almost leaving the house by the time he actually got a dedicated run. He had been on the extra board all those years, and that was the way it worked. And like you said, those big line haul operations, at FedEx, we really had 2 dispatches. You had a morning dispatch, which was most of our line haul stuff, the butt heads, all that. You had the evening dispatch, which was usually out to the satellites to bring the freight back into the hub. But they stuck pretty close to a schedule. Growing up, I remember that my dad had no schedule whatsoever. He might leave at 8 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon or midnight, or there was almost no schedule on their runs. It was just like freight was moving all the time.
Yeah, they call that if you want to break down into the business terms of freight analogy, they call that continuous flow. What FedEx, where you work, they had freight flow, and where I work, we have freight flow, but we don't have continuous flow. Old Dominion runs that continuous flow operation. They got line haul runs leaving, and they never stop leaving.
Yeah, that's the way what my dad was with Spectre most of the time until they went out of business, and that it was just around the clock. I mean, you never knew when he was going to work. There was no schedule at all.
Right. Yeah, I've got friends on the extra board over at Old Dominion. They said, well, it's not like there where, all our daytime line hauls will leave,
right.
All of them within an hour and a half of each other, and all the PM line hauls will leave to go to we call freight assembly centers, you call a hub or a break bulk.
Yeah.
They'll all leave within 3 hours of each other to stagger in so that you don't overrun the dock with freight, But anyhow, but the continuous flow idea is the freight never stops. You never hold anything. You hold nothing for 3 hours for the next driver. It hits your facility, and you dispatch it right back out.
Yep.
But anyhow. But what I learned when I was doing that PM operation is that back then, I finally had a stress that could affect me where you could notice it if you were around me. And I learned that the stress due to fatigue was the one stress I could not handle.
Fatigue, you mean?
Yeah, stress due to fatigue. I would get after about the 3rd or 4th day, I didn't even have a fuse left.
Yeah.
I mean, it got shorter and shorter and shorter.
Well, we're really, really piling on. One of the ways we can deal with lots of stress better is if we actually sleep good. Usually by the time you're under that much stress, though, your sleep has been compromised as well. So if you are fatigued and stressed, yeah, that's definitely enough to push you right over the edge.
Yeah. But now that I, with my sleep number bed, select comfort bed, whatever you want to call it, now that the house is done, we're just down to, little nooks and crannies and dings and dents and hanging pictures and that's not really the only stress I got right now is it's going to be the issues my wife's going to be calling about, and then I got to get a surgery done for her because she's in pain every day. But and that does stress me out.
Oh, I'm sure.
Imagine if you look at your wife every day and she's in pain.
Yeah,
every 2 to 3 hours, her face is contorted.
That's
stressful. That just doesn't go well with your
Right.
But that's we're down to that. But anyhow, so as far as how long should I expect for this cardio miracle to really wipe that blood pressure medicine out? Now, I do notice already that if I sleep on my side, my hands don't go to sleep. So I know it's doing something. I could tell that the first day I used it.
Yep.
So I mean, I know it's doing something.
We tend to see the blood pressure drops start around the third week of continual use, and usually after a month, there's been a pretty good 10-point drop for people who are elevated. If your blood pressure is pretty normal, you really don't see any major change. I mean, I take Cardio Miracle every day, but when I started taking it, my blood pressure was pretty normal, and it stayed pretty normal. Really didn't change much because I'm taking it because it's where it should be anyway. I like it for the other benefits. Like I said, I think it's probably the closest I would ever get to recommending some sort of a daily, multivitamin. I tell people all the time, stay away from those. But this is kind of a pretty good substitute for that. It's a supplement I just like to take every day. It kind of keeps you up on some of those things that are hard to get in our diet.
And when I ordered that, I ordered 2 boxes of it, and it ended up being the instant coffee.
Okay.
The mushroom coffee for my wife.
Okay.
Because I was talking with you about her menopause, and I went ahead and told her to go ahead and stop taking that synthetic hormone replacement.
Yeah.
And she quit. And now she, out of them 2 little boxes, the bigger order that I ordered after that hadn't showed up yet, but she really, really loves the mushroom coffee, and
good.
She's been drinking it for not quite a full week. So, and she already says that her hot flashes and stuff is already getting better. She quit
Excellent.
the synthetic stuff. So I think that's on the right track, but I still want her to do a discovery call and really nail this down and get through it.
I do
think
too,
it'd be
because we can help her with a very specific protocol that's going to go deeper. We'll continue with the mushroom coffee, the adaptogens. We'll also use some of the supplements we have for detoxing those receptors. That was one of the things we just discovered recently, that you can be taking all of the right compounds to help manage stress, but our receptors for those compounds, a receptor is kind of like a lock and a key. We have receptors all over our body. So there's the receptor is the lock, and the molecule, the adaptogen, would be the key. And if we can get those two to connect, then things work better. But that lock can get frozen and all gunked up, and then no matter how much the molecule we take, it's not going to matter. It can't make that connection. So one of the most recent supplements we've released for this is that receptor detox. So we kind of clean up those receptors so that as we take these supplements or the adaptogens, they're actually able to work.
kind of like knocking the corrosion off a terminal when you're hooking a wire up.
Pretty much. Yep.
Get a better connection.
Yep. That's exactly what we're talking about. So we can help her even more. I think the adaptogens sounds like they're already having an effect, which is a good sign. Sometimes we see people that just don't respond to much of anything. That's when we really have to, dig down deep. But if she can already feel some changes, that's a really good sign.
Yeah. I've been talking to her about this for quite a while, and I tried to get her to not go on synthetics, and it's not really true knowledge. I'm simply repeating what I heard, which you've talked about that over and over and over again. But I've listened to you for long enough. When she asks me questions about things, I can't actually explain to her why. And actually, yesterday she looked at me and she's like, honey, I'm really impressed at how much you learned about all these different things about health. Then that made me think about you, different guests you had on your show. He goes, think of the education these drivers are getting right now and all the books they can listen to. It's just
I know. It's pretty incredible.
Unless you just waste your time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there is really so much to learn. The hormone thing. A lot of these doctors make it sound like these aren't drugs. Well, these are just hormones. You already have hormones in your body. We're just trying to balance them out. But it's been my experience it never works. We just aren't smart enough to try to figure out what levels of all these different hormones we're supposed to have and then somehow manipulate them with chemicals, really. Now, then there are practitioners, more natural practitioners, who do use what they call bioidentical hormones. So those are much closer to the hormone that our body creates, which sounds even better. Except we just don't see much success with either one of these treatments. I really have not found anybody who is completely happy with the results. At best, they say, well, it took away some of the symptoms. I don't get as many hot flashes. My mood swings aren't as bad. But nobody's ever really happy. And then there are some side effects we can fight with these things. So it's no different than any other area of health. We don't want to have to put in some sort of a chemical in order to feel right. We want the body to balance itself. And hormones are one of the more complicated, but recently, just in the last year or two, between the supplements like Ancestral, where we can, give the organs themselves the receptor detox, and then the adaptogens. I mean, that's really what it's taken, almost like this 3-step approach to fix the worst of cases. But the good news is it works.
Right. And that's I told her. She was a little bit upset with her doctor. He's an old country's type doctor. He owns the building. Everybody in there works for him. He will not sign up with an HMO, or he'll bill him because he has his own billing department in house.
Yeah.
But he won't be a part of the medicals. Like here locally, we have have Mercy. He won't. He don't want nothing to do with their puppy mill medicine.
Yeah.
He'll mix his own shot for you right there in front of you. He's that guy.
Good.
But she goes, I was really kind of upset with him because he just went right to this. And I go, well, that's his training. You can't be mad at him for that.
You
and she's like, well, he's a DO. He's not just a doctor. And I go, yeah, but they don't teach him nutrition. They don't teach him these things. What they teach him is like, when you're studying your patient and you see your patient has all these symptoms, you look over here, the symptom points, all the arrows point to menopause.
Yep.
Then you go through your graph and you slide your finger over for menopause. What do I do? Oh, I do hormone replacement. That's exactly his answer.
Right.
He was trained to give you that answer.
Yeah.
And I go, but what they didn't train him to do was fix the problem. He's simply just trying to put helium and air and anything in the tire to keep it inflated. We're not fixing the damn hole in the tire. We got to fix the hole.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. And what we are still finding is that there doesn't seem to be any area of health left that isn't solved with just diet and lifestyle. the book that just came out, now I'm still kind of working my way through it, and I'm thinking I might do a book report on this one, Brain Energy, which is where we finally got a psychiatrist, a guy who has been working with, mood disorders and those kind of things his whole career. And we've never really understood that. I mean, we kind of struggled with it. We deal with people who are on SSRIs and they do not want to quit them. They're terrified of quitting them. And, we weren't exactly sure on that, but now we have just as much evidence to show the brain's no different than any other organ in the body. It needs the proper nutrition, and that's all it needs. Give it the right nutrition, it'll function just fine.
Brain Energy, who's the author on that one?
Oh, for some reason, this guy's name is not sticking with me. Let me see if I can find it real quick. He's not one of these practitioners that we hear about a lot. This guy's kind of new on the scene. I have a feeling we're going to hear a lot more from him now that he's written this. Christopher Palmer. Really? Now, I will say this. This is not a book that I've really heavily recommended. I probably will only recommend this to people who either really just like learning all this stuff, and there are plenty of those out there, or you're dealing with somebody that has these issues. Then I would say you should listen to this. It's not an easy listen. It's one of those books that's a little more difficult to get through. There's a lot of repetitive stuff for people that listen to this show because we've talked about all the food issues for so long. He goes over a lot of those in a lot of depth again. But ultimately, he kind of gets to the point that all of these issues, anxiety, depression, bipolar, they are all just metabolic disorders of the brain. That there's nothing weird or different about these. When we get our metabolism correct, then our brain gets better, just like everything else does.
Well, do you got a good recommendation for, say, a book for like body mechanics? Besides just staying mobile, like through the wintertime, we've got a workout facility in the basement, but the wintertime, there's a lot of days it gets pretty bitter back where I live.
Yeah. Not really. I don't really have a good book. Almost everything we've been taught about that stuff has been so wrong, and I can't think of a book that anybody's really written. My general advice for the most part, other than like the 10 minutes of resistance training a couple times a week, is that we shouldn't be doing...
That's probably enough.
Yeah, what we've been doing, which is, all kinds of cardio and... we should just be more active in natural movements. Find activities you really like doing, whether it's, summer or winter. Get out and snowshoe or cross-country ski or, find something you actually enjoy doing and isn't totally repetitive. One of the mistakes we make in working out in gyms is the motions are just way too repetitive. And we don't get enough kind of free play, just getting out and being more active and moving. The other thing I'm looking for, one of the things I've struggled with my whole life is flexibility. I've just never been flexible. I have to work really hard at it. And I don't really enjoy it.
That's my biggest issue.
I know. So I am... I've got a ton of projects going on right now that we've just got to get through, but that one's on my list to find some sort of good solution to stay flexible.
Well, especially my right hip flexor. Like even as a child, I could never sit what they won't even allow you to say Indian style anymore. So if I offended anybody, I sincerely wish you would just move to another country.
Exactly.
But anyways, I tell you, a gal I dated for a while, I helped her raise her kids for about 7 years. They were Inuit Indian, and they was going to school. And of all places to get told this, Southwest Missouri, it's leached into everything.
Exactly.
But anyways, Samantha comes home one day and she goes, "Well, got in a circle. We had to sit crisscross applesauce." And I go,
"What?
You had to do what?"
I remember
and
the first time I heard that too.
That crisscross applesauce. And I go, "What the heck is crisscross applesauce?" And she goes, "Well, it's sitting Indian style, but you're not allowed to say that because it's offensive." And I looked at her mom, her mom was like just a raging. She was as liberal as Rush Limbaugh was the other way. Okay,
yeah.
Just to understand her mother. And I looked at her mother and I go, "What kind of bullshit's that? She's an Indian and she can't even say it. She's an Inuit Indian,
exactly,
and she can't say it. How stupid is this?"
Yeah.
I mean, my God, dude.
I know. We have totally gone off the deep end on this. Hey, Dale, I just looked at the board, and it's filling up here, so I'm going to cut you loose and move on. The calls are starting to pile up on me. Keep them coming. 855-950-3835. We're going to head off to Kentucky. David, it's your turn.
Hello, Kevin. Been listening to you for quite a while now. I'd like a little help on getting going on some of this medical stuff. I'd like to get rid of my blood pressure medicine. I'm on a low dose blood pressure medicine, but it gets me a once a year physical that I'd rather not have to go to.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm at a little bit of a loss of how to find out more information about how to and get into this program.
You broke up a little bit there. More information on how to, and then I didn't hear the rest.
How to get hooked up to buy the stuff that you're promoting and selling.
Well, maybe we don't need to buy anything. That's almost never where I start. We have lots of things that can help people. There's no doubt. But most of it would not do you much good if you were still eating the standard American diet. You would really just be wasting your money on any of the stuff we talk about. So our approach is we do this completely with diet in the beginning. There's no reason we can't go the first 30 days with no supplements whatsoever. Now, if you start this in a week or 10 days in, you're dealing with things like muscle cramping. There are some negative things that can happen when you change your diet. And if that's the case, we have supplements we know will fix those things. But what I really like to do is get people to commit to changing their diet for 30 days. Many of the things you are dealing with right now, whether it's joint pain or skin issues or whatever it might be, low energy, many of those things are going to resolve themselves with just diet alone. So I'd rather wait that 30 days. Let's see what changes with diet. If there's something left that we could address with supplements or, specific foods, then we can do that. Unfortunately, I've just watched a lot of people spend a bunch of money on supplements, and 2 weeks later, they're back to eating their own old diet, and it was just a waste of money. So I'd rather just see somebody to commit to, 30 days of it is a pretty radical change in the diet. And a lot of people just won't do it or won't stick with it. So rather than waste everybody's time and money, we just like to start with diet.
Well, okay. Is there anywhere on your website that I can find any helpful tips on this diet change?
Yeah, but I can help you with it without you reading anything. We can really make this simple. Tell me about your diet right now. Is it pretty much just the standard American diet? Uh-oh. Did I lose that? I did. I lost that call. Wonder what happened there. Maybe we'll be able to get him back. I was just about to tell him how easy we could make this, but I'd rather do it when I'm talking to him, so we'll see if we can get him back. Let's go to Texas. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kevin. I was listening a couple of weeks ago when you were talking about the fermenting peppers.
Yeah.
And I got there where you said you just slice them because it's just easier to slice them instead of chop them. So you just slice all them peppers and you cram as much in a jar as you can. How much raw, unfiltered honey do you put in that jar to ferment those peppers?
You cover the peppers and fill the jar completely.
Okay.
So
I had to get out of the truck, and you said you'd put the honey on, but you never did say that you filled it up or anything. So
yeah, so depending on a couple of things, how hot do you want the honey to get? How thin do you want the honey to get? You would put more peppers in. I have taken a quart jar. It doesn't really matter what size, but I've taken the quart jar, put all the peppers I can in there, pound them down with my wooden pounder, put more peppers in, pounded them again, put more peppers in. You completely fill that jar with honey after that. And you even wait because the honey will take a while to filter all down through, and then you can come back in an hour and you can probably get more honey in. And then you put the lid on it and just leave it out at room temperature to start fermenting. Within 48 hours, that honey is going to change dramatically. It gets really thin pretty quick, and the more peppers you put in, the thinner it will get. And it starts to get pretty hot depending on the heat of your peppers. And after 48 hours, you will have hot honey. You can let it go longer, a week, 10 days, 2 months. I mean, whatever. It will continue to ferment and change.
That's what really got my attention because I'm gone on the truck Monday through Friday, and I come home on the weekend. So I was just going to do it like on a Friday or Saturday whenever I got in, and fill that thing full of peppers, and then I should be good to go. And I have just one more question. Whenever I go, I got me an All-American pressure canner.
Okay.
And whenever I go to do meat, like not ground beef, but meat, I know you have to. The instructions say 75 minutes at a certain pressure or whatever. But what I was going to ask you is how much do you actually cook that meat before you go to pressure canning it? Like I have some deer meat that I want to.
That's totally up to you. It doesn't require any cooking at all. You can do what's called raw pack. And I do. Some meats I actually prefer to raw pack. I never raw pack ground meat because it tends to get really, really clumpy when you do that. So I do cook my ground meat just enough so that it doesn't clump up. It doesn't need to be completely cooked at all. But anything other than ground meat, chunks or pieces or whatever, you can raw pack it if you want.
Okay. So would that be okay if I threw a can of green chilies in there?
Absolutely.
Put my meat in there, pack it down in there really good, and then drop probably about a quarter of a jar of that hot honey in there, and then can it like that? That won't hurt anything?
It won't hurt anything.
Pressure can it that way?
I would, a quarter of a cup might be a lot. You might end up with I would, before I would can something like that, I would work out that recipe to make sure you like the taste of that. I think for me, a quarter cup of honey into meat would be way too much.
Okay. Well, I guess I could. It doesn't need refrigeration or anything. That hot honey does it.
No. In fact, you don't want to refrigerate it.
So I could just bag that with me in the truck.
Yeah, you take the honey with you.
Yeah, I'll just grab it with me in the truck.
Yeah,
and just pour it over the meat. Okay. Well, that's all I got today, brother. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the call. Let's see.
You bet. Thank you.
We're going to head off to Kansas this time. Ernie, welcome to the program.
Yeah, this is Ernie. Anyway, I sent you an oil sample. And
yes, you
did.
So this is a different sample than I'm used to looking at, but give me just a minute here. The first thing that jumps out at me, how many miles are on this sample? 22. Is that 200 and... Oh, no, 31,000 on the oil itself. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you using Catalyst?
No, I'm not.
And how
If
many...
you go back in the...
We're at like 300,000 miles on the engine. Is that correct?
As far as we know, we bought the truck used that had 198,000 miles on the odometer, and we have no idea
Okay. Well, there's...
when it was overhauled. But it's an M11 coming, so I'm assuming it was overhauled at some point. But
Yeah, it has been, but we don't know much. Here's the biggest problem that I'm seeing. The biggest you've got a lot of soot. This thing is not really burning well. It's not running all that well. When was the last time the overhead was set?
Well, and see, I don't know, did it sent you all the different oil samples lined up there? Is that right?
Yeah, I've got the whole
Where
history
you
on
can
them.
see them all? Okay. Well, back there at the very beginning of that list, I had started having trouble with getting more iron, and the soot was not as bad.
Yeah, so...
And where the brake is, I changed the oil where they don't have the flag on the iron.
Right.
And I got it overhauled, or I got it, the top end did, and there was a broken spring valve spring and a mushrooming valve that I got replaced.
So if we look at that,
and then
the one sample that it wasn't flagged, one of the reasons that it wasn't flagged, let me check that one again.
the new oil.
Well, yeah, you didn't have many miles
It
on
was
that
new
oil. Yeah, 75 was still way too much iron. 13 was way too much lead. Here's the problem that you've had this whole time. If I go back on every sample, we never want to see silicon get above 10. 10's our limit, high limit, because silicon is dirt. And
Okay.
yours has been 14, 16, 14. The only one that was 10 was because that's the one that you just didn't put many miles on the oil. Then we were at 14. Now we're at 15. All of those wear metals are coming from that dirt.
Okay, well, and it's kind of what I was needing to know because, and they didn't, this list don't go back, but when it first started getting the higher iron and the higher lead, my soot or my silicon was at 7, 8, and then all of a sudden it jumped to where it's at 14, 15, and 16, and it stays there. And I was wondering if that was enough to make the iron climb and the lead.
Not only is it enough, that is the absolute cause of this.
Okay.
You've got to address this
well,
dirt.
Then
You're eating up this engine.
Okay, so I need to see about the air intake system and see if I can find where it's leaking.
Yeah, you're getting dirt in somewhere.
And that would make my soot go up too and everything.
No, that won't. We can't confuse those two issues. The biggest issue is the dirt, because that's what's causing all the wear metals. The soot is either something off on the overhead. We've got restrictions in the exhaust. There is something causing the soot to be higher than normal. That's a secondary issue. I wouldn't worry about that yet. Let's solve this dirt problem first because it's more destructive.
Okay. And on that one that wasn't flagged, the soot was at 1. That would be okay at 1, or is that still?
Well, hold on. It's not that that is okay, except for the fact that you only put 11,000 miles on that oil. That's not a long enough time to get good readings. Don't look at that one sample and go, oh, no, see, I had a good sample. No, you didn't. For 11,000 miles, that wasn't a good sample.
Okay, so that it wasn't good. Even I've got an oil bypass and stuff, and I pull my samples and change my filter at 11,000. It's a FS 2500, and that's what they recommend.
Well, 25,000 is fine, and that's what I'm saying. But you did a sample here at 11,000. That's less than half.
Well,
so you have to look at those numbers differently.
It's not less than half because the FS 2500 they recommend every 10,000 miles to pull a sample and change the filter.
You're kidding me! How could you save any money like that? You're going to end up spending as much money as if you just did your oil changes. I've never understood these filters that require you to change the filter and sample that often. Think about this. We have trucks on the market right now. You buy them the way they're sitting on the factory, the dealer's floor, 60 and 70,000 mile oil changes. Why would I ever put a bypass filter on that truck that makes me change my filter and sample at 10,000 miles? That's insane. They don't have much faith in their filter. Hell, if you're...
I guess. I didn't know if their filter was small.
Well, it can't be any smaller than the OPS. The OPS is one of the smallest filters on the market.
Not.
Right. It's not... This is a case where size doesn't matter. We don't have to have a really big filter to get really good filtration.
See, and I've got a Caterpillar with one on it too, and I only change it like every 15 or 16,000 miles because everything's fine, you know.
Yeah. On the OPS, no matter what the engine or the truck, we never change that filter or take a sample any sooner than 25,000. It's just not necessary. We're just wasting time and money if we have to do it sooner than that. And if a bypass filter says, well, that's what it takes, we have to change our filter that often, well, then I don't want that filter. It's not doing me any good. It's causing me more work than it's saving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty often. That's like every month at least.
Yeah, it's just not necessary. But this one, you've got to find this dirt problem first.
Okay, and how about the sodium and the potassium? With them low numbers, that's not enough to say it's
nothing.
A coolant leak.
It's nothing. Here's the other thing.
That's nothing.
With coolant, one of the other ways we know we have a coolant issue that needs addressed, if you ever have to add coolant, that's a sealed system. If you have to add coolant, something went wrong. But if you haven't had to add coolant yet, we can just keep monitoring it. But these numbers would not indicate that you have an internal coolant leak.
All right. So it tells me I need to find out where the dirt's getting in. See, I didn't know if that was a high. I mean, if that was too high dirt rating.
10 worries me. 10 worries me. I'd like to keep it in single digits. And your lowest reading ever was 10. And that was only on 11,000 miles. When I say 10 worries me, that's at 25,000 miles.
Okay, yeah. I had more oil samples, but they're not on here. And back when all this iron climb started, it was the soot level was 7 and 8, and then it doubled. And then my iron started really cranking up in the lead, you know.
I can't see those samples. They must be too far back. But the other thing that could be just as destructive as dirt, when you start talking about 7 or 8% soot, that's destructive to an engine.
Oh.
But I can't see those. That's too far back.
That was... Well, and that was what the dirt was 7 and 8 before it jumped to 14 and 15. But I didn't know exactly how much dirt was too much.
More than 10.
Okay, so nothing but 10, and lower is better. Like Caterpillar, I get like my silicon's usually like 3.
That's what we like to see. And
my
again,
soot,
keep in mind,
and my soot is like 0.2.
when I talk about numbers on an oil sample, we are talking about an oil with at least 25,000 miles on it. Anything less than that, we start to adjust those numbers. So if you had an oil sample that was 7 or 8 with 10,000 miles on it, that would worry me. That would be too high for that number of miles. So when I say 10, we have to keep in mind that's on 25,000 mile, at least that much on the oil. So if we had significantly less, then we have to adjust those numbers we're looking at.
In finding that leak, would taking a can of starting fluid and spraying around on it, if I hit the hole, it would
sometimes
rev it up a little?
Sometimes you can get
sometimes,
that.
yeah.
Not always. So it's
Depends
one of
on
the
how,
ways we can
yeah, it
test.
depends
right?
on.
So keep keep in mind that intake system after the turbo is pressurized. That's what the turbo's doing.
It's not the problem.
Right. So if you have a leak in that system, it's trying to force out, not suck in. So sometimes the better is soapy water and look for bubbles.
Okay. But wouldn't if it's getting dirt into the motor, wouldn't it be on the other side of the turbo where it's stuck in there?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily?
Right. We can, even though it's a
My
pressurized system, when the truck is in operation and you're accelerating, decelerating, you can get air into that system even if it's pressurized.
Okay. Well, my fuel mileage has stayed good, as good as it ever is.
Yeah, the fuel mileage can be an indicator, but we would really, really have to understand our fuel economy inside and out. With one truck, there are so many variables in fuel economy that it's not always an indicator. Let's do another oil sample. Let's go to Tennessee. John, welcome.
Hi, Kevin. Hey, I sent you an oil sample, and right off the bat, this isn't like a big truck engine. This is my personal pickup. It's a Cummins 6.7.
Just so you know, I don't have enough experience looking at oil samples on these engines to, I might be able to figure out a couple things here, but I don't trust my own knowledge on these just because I don't have enough history doing these. I don't recognize patterns in these engines the way I can in all the other engines. So let me see. How many miles are on this? The unit, 25,000 on that first sample and 38 on the second. And about 13. Now, is that 13,000 miles on the oil itself? Each time?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, it's supposed to be around 15, but sometimes I get it changed early.
Okay, so 15 is the recommended
I don't have an OPS
change on that engine?
15 is recommended.
Okay. See, I don't even know that. I just don't deal with these engines enough to know what's even recommended. I actually thought 13,000 miles was a lot on this, but if 15 is the recommended, that's fine. Let's go through the wear metals. The iron seems way high to me. Are you running catalyst?
Yeah, I do run it.
Okay, so that we can kind of ignore that. We have a little bit of chromium, so we do have some upper cylinder wear coming from somewhere, and we have some aluminum. So that could be upper cylinder. The copper I would ignore because there really hasn't been any lead. So here's another, I got to kind of qualify my statements. In a heavy truck engine, I know all the places copper could come from, so I know when I need to be worried about it and when I don't. In this engine, I'm not sure of that. There may be some other copper component in this engine that could be wearing that I'm just not familiar with. So that's why I don't really like to, I don't want you to put a whole lot of faith in my answer here is what I'm trying to tell you.
be able to steer me in a direction of someone that can maybe help me? I just don't want to go to like the Dodge dealership and walk in there. He's most likely that diesel technician in there's probably never even seen an oil sample.
So
but,
I would,
I could be wrong.
No, you're right. That the mechanics and technicians are not good sources of reading oil samples unless they've been taught and trained in it. Most of them haven't. I would start with the lab itself. Whoever you're doing your samples through. I know this is an OPS sample. Whoever you submit your samples to, I would check with Polaris and just see if they have any answers for you. They'll be able to help you some. I'm not seeing. I'm a little concerned about the wear metals. This engine we would expect to easily go a couple 100,000 miles. And we're at 38,000, and we're seeing enough wear metals that it would worry me. You know what I might try? I might try a different oil. I might try Rotella.
Well, the first, no, I take that back. I haven't been able to get Rotella. I always did run Rotella, but then, during COVID and stuff, I haven't been able to get it, and now it's just starting to show back up on the shelves.
I would switch back to Rotella. Sometimes we just see certain engines don't like certain oils. There's nothing wrong with the Valvoline oil, but sometimes we just find some additive packages work better with certain engines. And when I see a lot of wear metals, Rotella has a lot of zinc, and zinc is very protective of the metal. So I can't see why you're getting the kind of wear metals we're getting, and maybe it's just because I don't understand the patterns well enough on this engine, but I think I might give Rotella a shot again.
Okay. And hey, one quick question about, I made that hot honey also.
Yeah.
And when I'm done, when I'm happy with how hot it is, just take the peppers out and put the jar in the cabinet.
Yeah. Yep.
Seal the jar up and put it away in the cabinet, and it's good for a long time?
Yeah. We don't know how long it's good for yet. People haven't, there's just not enough of this going on. So we're in a learning curve here. The other thing I would caution everybody against, I would not seal that jar hard, tight, until you know for sure that it has stopped fermenting. For some reason, I've done a ton of batches of this stuff in the last several months. All of them have been fine. I always bottle them up and I put them in those Grolsch beer bottles that have that ceramic cap and the cage on the top so you can reclose them. I've been putting all of mine in that and closing them tight. Except last week, I don't know if you heard, I opened one up and it sounded like a 12-gauge shotgun went off, and all 16 ounces of the honey ejected into my pantry.
That had to be fun to clean up.
Oh, it took me almost 8 hours. I'm not exaggerating. I had to take everything out of the pantry and clean it all by hand. It was such a mess. It's the only one that's built up pressure. Something I did different when I made that batch. There was something in that honey that was still fermenting. So until you know that it's definitely not fermenting anymore, it's not bubbling at all, it's not creating pressure each day, I would keep a close eye on it in the beginning before you seal it tight.
Okay. Yeah, and you were talking about, drain intervals on the big trucks. I own a Freightliner with the DD15, and my book is 75,000 miles for oil change and fuel filters.
Yeah, that they do have some bypass filtration on these trucks, right? These trucks are finally, we've been pushing bypass filtration since the early 90s, and they're finally starting to show up on these newer trucks. They have some bypass filtration. That's why they're able to go this long between oil changes.
Yeah, I use the OPS too, and
it's still worth it.
My semi, but
Yep. On this one,
that's all I got.
Thank you for your time.
Yep, I think I just try Rotella and see if we can get any better results. Let's go to California this time. Jeremy, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin. I've been listening to, trying to catch up with the shows. Heard the one before Thanksgiving. So I didn't hear that story you just told about the honey. But
it was so bad. And it was like,
wow.
It was about 20 minutes before I was getting ready to go on the air. I was opening the honey because I was going to do my shot and a quote and do my recording. And I walked in there and the funny thing was, this bottle was also the only bottle where the honey started to crystallize on the top. And I picked the bottle up and I looked at it and I could see it crystallizing, maybe like a 1/4 inch of the top had crystallized. And I thought, I was thinking about shaking it to mix up the crystallized honey. And I thought, no, I'm just going to open it and I'll see what this is. And man, when I released that cap, it sounded like a 12 gauge went off. It was so loud.
Wow.
And the bottle was empty before I could react. Like, I reacted and tried to put my thumb over the top.
God.
It was too late. Everything was already out of the bottle.
Wow. So you think that if you shook it, it would have been not as bad because that would have broke that?
No,
that
I think
seal?
it would have been
or
worse. I think it would have been much worse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and honey, it was on the ceiling. It covered a refrigerator, a microwave, a dehydrator. I had all kinds of equipment there.
I can imagine.
Just stuff everywhere. I've got a big pantry, and I was in the pantry, and it just exploded everywhere.
Well, let me see if I can form my question. It was about the mushrooms. As far as, related to the stress protocol, how the stress that we endure, right, is that we expose ourselves to with all of them. It helps us deal with stress later, right? It strengthens our stress muscle.
Correct. Yeah, that's strengthens and balances. That's another.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another good function of adaptogens. They kind of balance our. We can become unbalanced in our stress response either way. We can be unbalanced on the low side. We have a very weak response to stress. We can also have a response to stress that's too strong. We can be and that's where I was. I was unbalanced on the high side. I get overreactive to stress. So adaptogens.
Yeah, Tammy and I kind of do that.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people who are eating healthy and who are doing some of the stress protocols tend to get unbalanced on the high side.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes we're kind of intense, and but I was my question was gonna be, so do you think mushrooms, when we ingest them, do you think they sort of mildly stress our body in a way that where it's on a slight negative, not negative, but a slight.
I haven't been able to measure that. No, I don't think that's what's going on. That is how we explain the stress protocol, why it's working, because it's stressing our response like the way we stress a muscle. So that makes sense. So we can document that. I really haven't been able to see that kind of a response with the mushrooms. But what I see with the mushrooms is the more of the adaptogens I consume. And, Danielle gave me a specific protocol. I was focused primarily on reishi, holy basil, which is also called Tulsi, and what was the last one? Ashwagandha. I think it was ashwagandha was the three she really had me focusing on, and that worked really well. Yeah, that one worked really well. It was very specific, very targeted to what I was doing, but that's hard to figure out. I mean, Danielle's really good at that. She wrote the book. So I started thinking,
Right.
if I can't get to that point where I can help somebody that specifically, then how could we do this? How could we simplify this? And the good thing about adaptogens, they're self-balancing, they're self-regulating. You can't take too much. And if you do, there's no downside to taking too much. Your body will use what it needs, and the excess doesn't cause any kind of a problem. So I started thinking, well, somebody could either spend a lot of money on blood work and one-on-one time to try to figure out exactly which adaptogens they should be using, or what if we just load up on several of them and see what happens? And it seems to work.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was interesting about the personality part, but because that is powerful. And then, but yeah, I just wondered maybe if it was related to the stress protocol, like I said earlier. But I get it. You understood that was my question.
Yeah,
my theory, but I was thinking.
I
get
thought
it.
that too, and I couldn't document that happening at all.
Okay. Okay, and
in fact,
I heard you say one time
opposite. As soon as I started taking the adaptogens, the stress numbers actually started improving almost immediately. So there was never an increase in stress the way we get from the stress protocol itself.
I see. I was thinking maybe the increase of stress would be like immediate, maybe like right when you consume it, but then it immediately might change. Right. Oh, okay. And I know you heard. I heard you say Lisa one time got her vitamin D levels up to 136 or 9.
Yeah.
What? Okay. Did she just stop the vitamin D altogether and continue the Cardio Miracle, or because I'm asking for Tammy, so I'm going to hand her the phone because she got up to 139 or last one.
Okay. So here's what we think. Hey there. Here's what we think is happening with this. So, we used to start with the vitamin D drops, and then we tell people to test and, just kind of tweak it till you get somewhere between 80 and 100, and you can kind of stay there. And in the wintertime, that might mean more drops. In the summertime, it might mean less, depending on how much you're getting out. But what we noticed was as soon as somebody started the Cardio Miracle, even though there isn't a lot more vitamin D in there, everybody's vitamin D numbers went way up. It's because of the other cofactors that are in there that's helping our body use the vitamin D better. So we didn't need the big amounts once we got the other cofactors. So I may had that been in the middle of summer, I probably would have just cut out the drops completely. But since we're into winter now and we don't see much sunshine here in the wintertime, I'm doing the drops. I just back off of them a little bit. Instead of 5, we're down to 3, and we'll probably test here in a little bit. I'm not too worried when a number gets up around 120 or 130. I don't want it to be there forever, but I'm not all that worried about it. I would just adjust down a little bit.
Well, so here's where I'm at. I took the vitamin D test 4 months ago, and I was in the 130s. So I went from 4 So 1 drop. And I was doing 2 servings a day at Cardio Miracle, and I just retested, and it came back a little bit higher.
So,
like a couple points higher.
So I would drop the drops completely. And are you eating a lot of foods with high in vitamin D? I bet you are.
We eat cod livers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we eat. We share a can once to twice a week. And then, sardine here and there. We take, and now here's what I wanted to talk to you about. We take the ancestral products. We take the liver, a full dose, 3 days a week.
I would cut your Cardio Miracle back to 1 dose a day.
1 dose,
yep.
Okay. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And I did reach out to Michael, and Michael said cut all vitamin D out. And I was like, oh, I really don't want to cut my Cardio Miracle. I love that stuff.
That's
but
kind of why
he said
I almost said the same thing. I was going to say, let's cut the vitamin D supplementation completely because you're getting so much in your diet and it's working for you. There's two reasons I don't want you to drop the Cardio Miracle. And if you drop it to one serving of Cardio Miracle a day and you test later on and we're still elevated, then go to every other day. I still wouldn't want you to quit it completely. Two reasons. One,
me either.
I do think it is a good daily. And two, it's very possible that if you were to drop it completely, your vitamin D levels could plummet. Not because you're not getting enough vitamin D, but because you might not be getting the other cofactors that are helping it work so well.
Okay. So Michael said he was concerned about the high vitamin D, like disrupting other nutrients, and had suggested I start taking 400 milligrams of magnesium and K by itself. But he didn't say what kind of magnesium, and I think he's busy and he didn't reach back out. So do you know, or would you suggest that too? Or?
Yeah, you probably do need magnesium. Almost everybody is deficient in magnesium. I don't know if we have our new magnesium product in or not. Let me ask somebody real quick. Or let me check the store and see if we have that. I found a new magnesium product that I really like. And I'm pretty sure we're supposed to be getting it into the store, but let me see. Not seeing it in there yet. Like balanced taste. I don't see it yet. I'll have to check on that. Let me check one more place. No, I don't see it in the store yet. It's a whole new company, a new supplier, but I'll check on that. That would be the blend that I would recommend.
Okay, and so should I just hold off on any magnesium until that comes in, or should I get something from the store now? You know, like the Actimag or anything like that?
The one I would use that we have right now, I would use the Actimag.
Okay, because Jeremy's got some, so I'll just start using it.
I would use that.
And 400 milligrams, it sounds about right?
That should be right, yeah.
Okay. And then what about the K by itself? Do you think that's necessary?
Because your levels are running pretty high right now, I would take it till we get this balanced out.
Okay. So you have the K2 in the store, right, just by itself?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. Jeremy wants to know if you have 30 seconds for him one more time.
Of course.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Oh, I was just going to say, so we're part of, I heard people saying they're part of the cult, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, okay, so, but we're a culture, right? You've created an awesome culture, and
oh, there you go.
So I wanted to add my name to the list in case the name's good for your drinks, maybe something to do with culture, and then also adapt cult or something. I don't know.
No, that's an interesting thought. You know, I never thought of the word cult being the base of the word culture. Huh.
Yeah, adapt to Colt 45.
Yeah,
or something. or what, four Sigmatic. I don't know what the 4 is, but
yeah, I'm not
I
sure
don't know.
Either.
But anyway, okay. As far as I did the black 32-inch Curious Steel. I tried it again. I was able to do like 5. I swear. I don't know if it's that ancestral. The testicles.
There you go. Yeah.
The male optimization, whatever it is. I started taking it, but no, really, I couldn't move it at all. And then I did it the other day. I swear I got like up to 5 reps.
There you go.
So I don't know.
That's a good.
I felt
sign.
pretty. Yeah.
That's right.
Pretty. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Good talking to you.
Thanks a lot, Kevin.
Again soon. You're welcome. Let's go to South Carolina. Ken, welcome to the program.
Hey, Kevin, how are you today?
Doing good. What's on your mind?
So you were talking to that fellow about oil samples, and he had the FS 2500 I've been running the same system for several years on 2 different trucks, and they do recommend a 10,000 mile change, but I just adapted to where I'm comfortable. So I'm out, just like with the OPS, out 2,500 or 25,000.
Well, here's what I don't understand. Well, I guess it certainly benefits them to have people changing at 10,000. They're selling filters and samples, but the whole point of sampling is so that we don't just use these random numbers like you did. You used, I'm assuming you used your sample condition and said, well, wait a minute, if I change it at 10,000, there's never anything even close to being wrong. Let's try 15. And your samples still look good. Let's try 20. That's what we should be doing. No matter what filter you're using, or if you're not using any filter, we could still change our oil just based on oil samples, not some random mileage.
Exactly, and that's what I tell people. You know, you go with the sample. Go with what the test says. Don't do it blindly.
Yeah.
Just don't randomly say, well, you know, I'm going to run 70,000 miles. Go by the sample.
Yeah, that's, you did it exactly right.
Take a good sample and go by it.
Yeah.
And I run my C15. I had 188,000 miles on a synthetic oil sample before I dropped it. And the only reason I dropped it is 188,000 miles, your lead keeps finding. And it got to a point where they told me they didn't feel comfortable with, if there is something going wrong, we can't see it anymore. So start over.
That's not bad advice at all. I've said that to people many times. Let's just do a reset. You know, the sample's getting a little confusing. Exactly. I don't want to miss something. So let's just do a reset and start over. Right. We got plenty of use out of this oil. You know, one of the filters that had been on the market for decades, and it was one of the few bypass filters that was actually advertised. They started advertising on XM right from the very beginning, but the whole filter, the whole system never made sense to me. It was the Gulf Coast. You weren't saving any money.
Yep.
At 10,000 miles, you had to take that giant filter out of there, which was an absolute mess. You lost like 2.5 or 3 gallons of oil, and you had to replace it. And I thought, well, shoot, I'm doing an oil change every 30,000 miles with this system, and it's costing me a fortune.
Exactly. And it's the same advice you give somebody that's using a lot of oil. Say they're in the rebuild range and they're at 2,500 miles a gallon.
Don't change your oil
anymore. There's no point changing your oil.
Never change your oil at that point.
Exactly.
You know, I've talked about this in the past. I haven't talked about it in quite a while, but I had I think it was my Astro, my GMC Astro, the cab over. It had a big KM 350 in it, and that had and this was a Cummins system, a factory system. I had a big oil canister on the back of the cab. It held 3 gallons, I think.
The old Lubifiner system.
Similar, but this one actually routed some of the oil into the fuel system, and you burned it. You burned the oil, and then you just kept adding makeup oil. You didn't really change the oil. That wasn't a bad system at all on a mechanical engine. I'd never do that to, one of today's modern diesels, but on a mechanical engine, that was a good system.
Yeah. So they also offer, FS 2500 also offers an adapter kit to put a spin-on filter on.
Oh, good.
So you go from the 8-inch element, you remove that, and that's probably where they get a lot of their sales spec from, is it's just an 8-inch element. So when you adapt to the spin-on, I think it's a 9 or a 10, I don't rightly remember.
Okay.
And they say you can go another 5,000 miles according to their quote unquote recommendation. But there again, if you're sampling, if you don't feel comfortable, sample at 15 like they say, and wait a week and see what it says.
Yeah,
and if
exactly.
It's good,
right.
You can tell if the filter's working. You can feel it. You can tell whether or not it's circulating oil. So
yep.
you can test it with a heat gun or whatever.
OPS went through that same transition. The original OPS used to be a drop-in filter. Then they came out with an adapter for their original, so you could do a spin-on, and then they just built their filters to accept the spin-on. So they went through that same thing.
Sure. So, change of pace. I started on the Cardio Miracle. I heard you talking about it. I called you about the polycythemia.
Yes.
So, I haven't seen a lot of change. I'm trying to track long term now to see how, if I'm extending my phlebotomies, if you will, because I'm doing the same thing. I'm sampling and draining on my body just like we do on these trucks.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
The sample comes back, your oil level's too high. I go to the doctor, go next door and plug me in and
give
drain
a little blood. That's right. Yeah.
There you go. So, but the one thing I did notice, I'm using the Cardio Miracle and the Light Balance, and using the two of them together, if I drink 2 Cardio Miracles a day, I noticed that my morning ritual is a little bit different. My BMs are more solid, if you will. Not that they're loose or anything, but they're more solid.
Okay.
And it's usually a shorter duration, it's usually a little bit more cumbersome to make everything move, but then when I do, it's a shorter duration.
Okay.
It's a mass. And I was curious to find out if I was running into problems with that you could think of.
No.
I backed off to one a day, and it doesn't seem to be as bad, if you will. So I'm more comfortable with the 1 Cardio Miracle a day.
I'd stick with 1 for now then. I'm just a big fan, and we should probably listen to our body. It's not a bad idea at all, and you seem to be pretty in tune with yours, so I would trust that for now. Right.
That's kind of what I thought, and I backed off of it altogether, and then same thing, reset 1 a day, and I've noticed that that's not as big of a deal, if you will, as it was before. So I'm just settling on the 1 a day.
Yeah,
but I didn't know if with the Light Balance, maybe I was getting too much of something because I haven't done any testing.
Yeah, well, and I normally don't recommend mineral testing. It can get expensive. It's not all that accurate. I almost feel like we can just kind of play around and tweak and come up with, good results, which is exactly what you're doing.
Yep. All right, sir. That's all I had.
All right. Thanks for the call. Let's go to Indiana. Jay, welcome to the program. Jay, I heard something there for a second. Are you with us?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear my name. Yeah, I'm here.
There you are. Go ahead.
I had a whole list for 9 months, and then I left it in the back of the truck, so I'll have to go off the top of my head here. But the app for Android is working a lot better.
Oh, good.
It's really easy to use, and it's getting better and better. So really appreciate that.
I knew our team would get that handled sooner or later. The Android side is always so much more difficult. On the Apple side, we have a couple of iPhones. They're all so similar that it's just not that big of a deal, and we don't need a bunch. On Android, we have boxes and boxes full of phones to test with. There's just so many different versions and, a different operating system. And so it's always more of a struggle on the Android side.
Yeah, and I've got the one that folds out to a tablet, so I figured that would be harder to do or weird, but it's working out really good. So
good.
I don't have long here. I'm going to be at the shipper soon. So
okay.
2 things. Did you know that the X3 they made it's hard to find it. You had to be on their email list months ago, but they make a longer bar by, I think, a few inches. Did you know they did that?
I did. For me, I guess if somebody was tall enough, it might make sense.
I'm taller with wider shoulders, so most of the exercises it does make sense, but it's pretty neat.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. There's some other bars on the market, too, that look pretty high quality, that look like they would work with the system. I'm going to start testing some.
Gotcha. Second thing, I'm really far behind on all the episodes, so I don't know if this has been addressed, but a month or two ago, you said you were wanting to go over there and see Wim Hof about finishing up your training. And I think, what was it, the vaccine reason? You didn't want to go to another country and everything's just kind of weird right now?
That was one big reason.
Was that kind of the reason?
Yeah, like, all the horror stories of people leaving the country and not being able to get back in, and all the different vaccination rules. And I am absolutely not taking the vaccine under any circumstance, so that was out of the question. And now what's happened is we are just buried with projects. Like, I had planned on a big road trip this winter, and I'm not sure, it's probably going to get cut back and shortened quite a bit. We just, all of a sudden, we just have a lot of really good projects going on, and I just want to commit time to them.
Oh, good. Can I add another one?
Sure. Yeah.
He used to be a lot more on social media and stuff, or just YouTube and everything, so I don't know his stance, and I haven't reached out, but what do you think about, obviously that'd be costly getting over there and you're just not going to do it, but I wonder if we did some kind of retreat here, and what if he came over here and there's a bunch of us that paid him to do it, and it's part of a health seminar, and now he's getting money, it's a business expense.
That's definitely a possibility, and that was one of the advantages when we grew the CMC big enough. Then we were able to bring in people like Larry Winget. I mean, Larry had been a speaker at the CMC for years. We brought in Dan Baker, and we were able to get some of those paid speakers in. So yeah, I could certainly see that may be a possibility.
Yeah, because then we're paying for it.
Yeah, exactly.
He gets money, and I don't know if he's willing to come to the U.S. I haven't heard. I know he's got certified instructors over here.
He does travel quite a bit. I've seen him do events all over the world. Good. So yeah, I don't think that would be out of the question.
Well, that's something I'm interested in, and I'm definitely ready for get everybody together. So
we are.
It's been a few years, so
we actually
that'd be really nice.
We actually just had a meeting the other day talking about this topic, about when and how we could bring an event back, because we're kind of missing it too.
Yeah. Well, I could talk all day, but I got to get off here, man. It was good talking to you. Have a good one.
Good talking to you. Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
It looks like I'm going to wrap this up for today. Speaking of projects, I have a lot I could go work on. We did make it through the calls today, so I'm going to wrap this up, and we will see you back here tomorrow for the Power Hour. Be safe, be profitable, be fit and healthy. Always do the hard work and master the journey.